collega Rothschild si sta già muovendo verso il palco. Qualche parola di introduzione. Leader di settore per la campagna Choosing Wisely nella rivista americana dei consumatori. Voi mi direte, caspita, strano relatore nel nostro concetto europeo, ma in realtà Consumers Report negli Stati Uniti è una specie di istituzione, nel senso che è riconosciuta per dire la verità, quindi è qualcosa che è creduto e che ha partecipato a costruire la cultura anche negli Stati Uniti. Questo è una cosa estremamente importante e alla fine la domanda che gli facciamo è: qual è stata questa esperienza e quali sono le cose più importanti anche per noi, per quello che stiamo facendo in Svizzera. E di base anche lei dopo aver ottenuto un Master in Public Administration, ha lavorato inizialmente anche lei nel Health Literacy, questa cosa che abbiamo citato anche nella relazione di prima, che sostanzialmente vuol dire, tradotto in italiano pari pari, alfabetizzare, quindi bisogna insegnare a chi se ne occupa, a chi si prende cura dei pazienti e poi naturalmente anche ai pazienti come interpretare i dati, come capire quello che viene detto dai medici e come anche seguire in modo efficace una cura. Poi finisco con una piccola cosa che è simpatica secondo me. Becca pratica anche il nuoto in oceano, mi ha detto, quindi fa chilometri a nuoto tra le onde e ha affrontato il meeting stamattina con un bagno nel lago, cosa che probabilmente merita un applauso. Many thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. It's wonderful to see so many of you here in Switzerland engaged in choosing wisely. I'm thrilled to be here. And as he just said, I did swim in Lake Lugano this morning, and it was beautiful, beautiful water temperature with the mountains. So it was a great way to start today. What I'm going to talk about today are some concrete ways that we have engaged patients and healthcare consumers with choosing wisely messaging in the United States. I'll talk about successes that we've had and challenges we've faced. And my hope is that you can learn from what we've done. You can use some of our materials and adapt them so that they're appropriate here in Switzerland, and take our learnings so that you don't need to reinvent what we did. So to get started, I want to tell you just for a minute about the organization where I work. I work for an organization called Consumer Reports. We are a nonprofit, independent organization. We're based in New York, although I live in San Francisco and work in our San Francisco office. And we are independent. We are non-biased. We don't take any money from corporations. And because of that, we are able to tell the truth and give people very factual, evidence-based information. We are not beholden to any industries or any companies. People in the United States know our brand and is very well trusted. And so when we talk about choosing wisely and we put the Consumer Reports name on it, patients, doctors, healthcare consumers know that it is a name that they can trust. So as you see here, we publish a magazine. We also have an online subscription service. And we test and we rate products like cars, refrigerators, vacuum cleaners, so that people understand what is the best to buy in terms of safety, reliability, and more. And similarly, we do the same thing with health information. Our goal is to get people to think about health as though they are a consumer and as though they are buying something tangible. And so we are trying to get them to ask the same questions with healthcare as if they were buying a material or a tangible product. So similarly with healthcare and with choosing wisely, we want people to ask questions such as, what does it cost? What are the risks? Is there something else that I should do instead? So that is just a little bit of background on Consumer Reports, the organization where I work. So now I'm going to talk about a lot of Choosing Wisely materials that we have created at Consumer Reports for Choosing Wisely, all for patients and healthcare consumers to use so that they can make informed decisions. And these are also for doctors and healthcare providers to use when they're having conversations with their patients. So as you'll see here on the left-hand side, we've created a lot of brochures on about 120 Choosing Wisely topics. So for example, when you may not need to take antibiotics for an upper respiratory infection, for the common cough or cold, or when you may not need imaging, like an MRI or a CT scan or an X-ray for low back pain or for a headache. All of the materials that we create are in plain English so that they are easy to read. I'm sorry, after I swam in the lake this morning, I'm now a little bit thirsty. We also have videos and TV videos that can be shown on TV. They can also be shown in waiting rooms and in exam rooms in hospitals so that people can learn more about choosing wisely there and about overuse of healthcare and the potential harms. We have posters and rack cards, and I'll give you some more examples of these. And we have e-hubs. These electronic hubs are places on our website where you can go if you want to find all of our consumer-facing materials for Choosing Wisely about certain topics like antibiotics or safe pregnancy or senior care, end-of-life care. So all this information that we have is out there for free, and there is no charge to use any of it. All of our materials are in English and in Spanish, which is probably not very useful to you, but other countries are starting to adapt it and starting to use our materials in other languages as well. So I want to talk now about some of those brochures you see on the further side over there. These are some examples of materials we've created for people who are interested in learning about imaging tests, MRIs and CT scans for lower back pain. And if you see the first one more toward the center, that is the first kind of a brochure that we created. And we have this for a lot of different topics. These are written at about the 7th to 10th grade level, so about middle school to high school, with the idea that everybody should be able to understand them. That was our thought. They're all evidence-based. They're reviewed by the medical specialty societies who created the topic. And we work with physicians and doctors at Consumer Reports to make sure that everything is accurate. The back side of it, which you can't see, has advice on what you can do instead, because we know that if we tell patients or healthcare consumers not to do something, they still want to know what they can do because they are still in pain, they are still not feeling well. So we always say if we tell them not to do something, we need to also tell them what they can do, and that is on the other side. We did some early testing on these about 5 years ago, and what we learned was that about 75% of people who read these said that there was enough information on them to help them make a healthcare decision, and about 45% said that they changed their opinion. However, one thing we learned, and this is a problem that is not spoken a lot about in the United States, but a lot of people in the United States have a very low literacy level, a very low reading level. And so we learned we needed to make these at an easier to read level. So the one on the top there is the same topic and the same evidence-based information, but at a 5th or 6th grade reading level, so easier to access. But even with that, we learned people really don't like to read a lot about health information. It's just not that interesting to people. So then what we did was we created on the far side and down at the bottom a rack card, so something more narrow, and a poster with very few words so that people could look at it, get the important information, and then go to the website if they wanted a lot more details. And we did this for a lot of other topics. This is just one example of back pain. We also learned that most people are not interested in healthcare, in a certain topic of healthcare, until they have that affliction, until they are sick or until they are not feeling well. But we still wanted to be able to educate patients and healthcare consumers about this concept of overuse and that it can lead to harm. And so what we thought to do was to create information on 5 questions to always ask your doctor before any medical test, before any treatment, or before any procedure. And the thought was that if people always knew what questions to ask, for example, do I really need this test or procedure? What are the risks? Or are there simpler or safer options? Those are 3 of them. If they always had those questions in mind, then they would be armed when they had some other medical problem and they could adapt those questions at their appointments. So we have posters, we have brochures, The next thing you'll see is wallet cards. So these are very small. You can put them in your wallet and bring them with you to your medical appointment right next to your insurance card. And we wanted to find out a little bit more about how well those worked. So right now we are actually doing a survey. Starting on July 1st, we opened up a survey, and it will end at the end of September. So we're about a little bit more than midway through it right now. 80,000 people said they were interested in participating in the survey to find out how well these questions worked at their appointment. So I don't have results yet because we are just in the middle of it. But I do have some trends from the first 4,500 people who took the survey. What they did was when they went to their doctor, they brought the card with them, they asked the questions that were appropriate, and then they went right into the waiting room, and we had an app for them. And we asked them some specific questions, like which of these questions did you use? Did you find them helpful? Did they change your opinion? How did the doctor react? And what we learned was 1 in 5 people who used them changed their plans about getting a certain medical test or treatment and also changed their opinion on it. 9 out of 10 people who used them said that their doctor was very open to answering the questions, and that 9 out of 10 also would encourage their family and their friends to use these questions. So again, we are still in the field. These might change as we close out the survey at the end of September, but those are some early findings. We have the questions here again on the rack card, and I'll point at the far side to some videos. We created videos in English and in Spanish so that people could understand the 5 questions and what questions to always ask. Some of them are being played on TV and on the radio around the country. And as I said earlier, they're also being used in exam rooms. One thing we learned was that if they're going to be played in exam rooms or at hospitals or clinics, you probably want to put subtitles on them because a lot of clinics want to stay quiet in their waiting room. So we did that. We went and put subtitles. So I'm going to show you a very short video right now so you get a sample of what they look like. One thing we learned with this black and white video is a lot of people now, as you know, are watching videos on their smartphones or on Facebook while they're commuting, maybe on the train. So they want it short, snappy, and with very few words. And so that was what we tried to create. And I'll show you that one right now. Their volume? And if people go to this website, they'll get information on how to access our patient-facing Choosing Wisely information. We wanted to call it Don't Be Silent, with the idea that we don't want you to be silent when you go to the doctor, but to ask questions. And when people go there, they can also get wallet cards for free that we will send to them so that they can take the wallet cards with them and hand them out to their friends and family. So moving forward, in addition to having these general 5 questions, we wanted to give information on certain topics and to do it in certain ways. So what we thought with the one here on the left and in the middle, in the United States, 2 health topics that are a lot in the media right now are overuse of opioids and overuse of antibiotics. I don't know if that's the same here, but we thought because people are talking about those so much, they're in the general media, we wanted to really go right onto that and use Choosing Wisely information on topics people were already talking about and hearing about in other areas. So these are, for example, do you have ongoing pain that is not from cancer or a terminal illness? If so, you probably do not need an opioid pain reliever. And then there's information on why you don't, what the harms are, and on the other side, what you can do instead. Similarly, 5 questions to ask about antibiotics. And then what we also learned is we wanted to address certain demographics of our population. So we wanted to address older adults who use a lot of healthcare, about how to stay healthy. And one thing we learned from seniors was that a lot of them had paid into their insurance plans, a lot of them had pensions, and with Choosing Wisely, they felt that care that they had paid for many years was being taken away from them now. So what we did for this population was we talked about 5 tests and treatments that seniors should get, and then on the other side, 5 tests and treatments that maybe they should question and think twice about. So we really try to change things around and think about different demographics that we are working with. We also wanted to make sure, because in the US, it's a very multicultural country, that we offered information in our materials with pictures of people with different races, ethnicities, genders, and ages. So we have a photo matrix where the groups who we work with can swap out the photos so that they'll best resonate with their communities. These are some pictures of how clinicians, doctors, nurses, an ophthalmologist, and other healthcare providers are using our information in their practices. They're also using them in electronic medical records. The receptionists are handing them to patients when they come in. They get emailed to patients. They're hanging up on the walls in the doctor's offices, in the exam rooms, and in the waiting rooms. And we also work with employers. So, for example, human resources agencies send our information out maybe during the cold and flu season. They send out our information about antibiotic overuse so that their employees can understand about it. So in addition to the materials that we created in hard copy, we also wanted to try to think about some other creative ways to do things. The first thing we did was we took all of our hard copy information that was in PDFs and put it into HTML because we know a lot of people are accessing information at the doctor's office on their tablets or smartphones. But we also wanted to find some stories to share. For a lot of us, and I don't know, I assume it's similar for a lot of you, when we talk about overuse and choosing wisely, people get a little bit confused. They think, how can this be harmful? What can happen? So we started collecting stories from real people with stories of overuse. And I'd like to read two of them to you. The first one from a woman named Darla. I noted in the Consumer Reports brochure that colonoscopies are not needed after age 75. And with that in mind, my dad, who had survived 3 cancers, did not want to be treated for any additional cancers and get severe abdominal pain from the colonoscopy preparation process, called up his doctor and declined the test. In my opinion, he chose wisely. Also from a woman named Jean, who we talked to, she said, when my condition recently flared up again and my doctor insisted on a CT, I was armed with the Consumer Reports fact sheet and I avoided unnecessary radiation risk of the equivalence of 3 years of natural background radiation and a hefty expense of nearly $1,000. When we put these out on social media and specifically on Facebook, it's amazing to see the conversations among strangers that happen as they start talking about overuse and they start asking questions and engaging with each other. But one thing that I would caution and I would recommend is the importance, if you start to collect stories like this, is that you have a doctor or a medical provider fact check them to make sure they're accurate. Not because the story sharers purposely tell an untruth or lie, but because you want to make sure that as they recalled it actually is something that is factual and that will make sense in a medical perspective. We also did something where we have interviewed many doctors and healthcare providers about how they use our Consumer Reports materials with their patients. And this is helpful because then other doctors and nurses can look at these stories and get ideas of how to do it and hopefully be inspired by it. Something else we've done is started to use a lot more social media. We're realizing how important this is. And so we have something called Choosing Wisely Wednesdays. We've been doing this for over a year now. And every single Wednesday, our social media team at Consumer Reports, which is quite a large following, tweets out and posts on Facebook various pictures of people with our Choosing Wisely materials around the country. Sometimes they're doctors, sometimes they're patients. They're holding up the wallet cards or other materials saying how they use them or what questions they recommend to ask. And if you think of doing something like this, a couple of recommendations that I would make are that you schedule them out far in advance so that you can make sure to have all of your permissions in place. And also that you have a network of your colleagues, the others you work with, and ask them every week, you send them the links and ask them to also tweet them out or post to their Facebook page so that your message can get even bigger and a lot more spread. The final thing that I wanted to talk about is a new thing that we're doing that I'm very excited about. This is using activism and mobilization to reach communities around the country with our Choosing Wisely information. So what we did was we wanted to think if we could find people throughout the United States in small cities and large cities and rural areas who could go around in their areas and talk about choosing wisely, people would understand it more. It would resonate if it was someone who they knew or someone in their community. So what we did was in April, which was the 5-year anniversary of Choosing Wisely, we put out a call for nominations. People could nominate themselves or they could nominate somebody else to become a champion. These are regular, everyday people. We said you cannot be a doctor, you cannot be a nurse, you cannot be professional at this. We thought maybe 5 people would apply, but 140 people applied. And we were shocked. So we went through a process where we judged them. We had 5 judges. And out of those, we took 40 who we interviewed, and we chose 18 of them to be our champions. We then put them through a very intensive 5-week training process to make sure they really understood what Choosing Wisely was, how to hold community events, how to manage a roundtable event when you have people who might be asking questions that you don't know how to handle, how to use all of our materials, how to talk to the media, and more. And as their graduation from this, all of them held roundtables in their communities. And this just happened over the past 2 weeks, so it's just wrapping up right now. We've had great responses from them, and a lot of them have now said, when can I do another one? I have responses to come to restaurants and libraries and schools and block parties to give more presentations. So we've asked all of them, they're volunteering, they're not getting paid. We asked all of them to stick with us for 1 full year and to keep giving more presentations. And what we are promising to give them is every month or so to bring them together on phone or online to continue to give them lessons and resources. So in just a couple of weeks, we're bringing them together with our social media director to teach them about social media tips so they can amplify Choosing Wisely that way. So it's been a great experience so far. And what I want to close with is my contact information. The top website there is where you can get a catalog of our Choosing Wisely information. The next one is our implementation guide. It talks about how to start a community Choosing Wisely program where you live. And right here, we have links to many of our videos. So I thank you for your attention. There's a picture of me. I was in Basel last year, standing on the corners of Switzerland, Germany, and France. And so I look forward to exploring more of Switzerland while I'm here and exploring Choosing Wisely with all of you today. So thank you.